Welcome to the 2019 State of the City Address. Please rise for the presentation of the colors by the Abraham Lincoln Color Guard and the Pledge of Allegiance recited by the Lincoln High School Junior Class Vice President, Tracy Trong.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the national anthem sung by Lincoln High School student Christopher Martinez.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please remain standing for the invocation by Nurya Shabir of the Islamic Center of Southern California and Rabbi Josie Hudson of the Temple Israel of Hollywood.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful.
As the Song of Songs proclaims, the winter has passed, the rains are over and gone.
Spring is in the air in our beautiful city of angels.
We join you on the cusp of the Jewish holiday of Passover and the Christian celebration of Easter.
And the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. For people of faith, this is a time of reflection, redemption, and rebirth.
For all of us, a time of renewal and rebirth.
The Quran tells us, and among God's signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth and the diversity of your languages and your colors. Indeed, in that are signs for those of knowledge. In this city, we celebrate our greatest strength, our diversity, our vibrancy, our collection of faiths and cultures.
On Passover, we remember that the first collective act of the enslaved Israelites was to cry out to God. It was only when they could name their collective suffering that redemption became possible.
Rabbi Hudson and I stand shoulder to shoulder today, two members of a modern-day collective that answers the injustice around us with moral outrage and love.
We ground our prayers in a message of understanding and empathy, believing at our core that redemption is only possible when all in our city exist without fear, with shelter and in safety, when all our children learn in good schools, and when they live on a planet that is healthy.
Mayor Garcetti, last month you stood with us in my spiritual home, the Islamic Center of Southern California, in the wake of the terrorist attacks in New Zealand, which killed 50 Muslims gathered peacefully in prayer.
On that day, Angelino is representing the very best of what this city stands for, wearing kippas and hijabs, turbans and taluses, with brown skin and black skin and white skin. Men and women, young and old, immigrants and native Angelinos held one another and promised to stand up with and for one another.
To stand for love and belonging, pluralism and mutual respect. To stand against violence and hatred, xenophobia and white supremacy. To stand against gun violence and any forces that sow the seeds of bigotry and division.
This is our Los Angeles. A city that brings together a Muslim immigrant and a queer rabbi to stand at one podium invoking a prayer of peace. In unity and hope
and responsibility.
Nuria and I are both mothers of young children. We are educators. We are members of faith communities, and the next generation has looked into our eyes and they have demanded that they inherit a city they can be proud of, a city they can live sustainably in, a city they can raise their children in.
Our sacred collective is the force that can and must unite all humanity, a powerful force which pulsates within and around us, one that we call upon today.
Source of all life, we pray that all Angelenos might look up to the mountains and see them wrapped in miraculous green new life.
And see the California poppies dotting our landscape.
And know that change and interdependence, nurturing growth and symbiosis
are not only possibilities, but the true order of the universe.
We ask that our mayor and our leaders be blessed with the wisdom to answer our children's calls, to answer our neighbors' calls, to answer our calls.
For compassionate leadership and innovative thinking.
For seeing all of us.
And affirming the dignity and holiness of all humanity and all of God's creatures.
Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will.
Insha'Allah, God willing.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 42nd Mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so very much. What an amazing gathering this is. And I want to wish you all a very good evening. To first of all, my family and friends, to my colleagues and members of the City Council, our City Attorney and City Controller, to my fellow elected officials from the school board, community college district, from our state legislature and from Congress, to all the union leaders, the neighborhood council leaders, to the business leaders that are here today, to all of LA, and especially to the students and the faculty of this great school. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Lincoln. Friends, we come here as we do each spring to take stock of where we are in Los Angeles, to reflect on the state of our city, and to peer forward towards our future. By all measures, we are living in extraordinary times, times in which we face new and fast-growing challenges to our climate, our Constitution, even our consensus around fundamental truths that have bound us. And as tough as these challenges may feel, our nation's inaction in addressing them is even worse. At a moment defined by both great potential and by threats to our families and futures, Washington remains paralyzed by partisanship, prejudice, and pettiness. But here in LA, we take a different approach. Here in LA, we see the problems in front of us. We act on the opportunities that surround us. We don't overlook tents and potholes. We don't disregard growing class sizes and rising temperatures. We do not ignore inequality. You know, there are so many amazing things that define Angelenos to me. Our openness, our innovative spirit, and our relentless pursuit of justice and equality. But the most powerful thread that runs through LA's history is the way that we take on tough challenges, our fearlessness. That's LA's story, and the one that we share right here on this very campus. You see, 51 years ago, at the height of this nation's civil rights movement, students here at Lincoln High School sparked a movement by walking out of their classrooms. with their peers from across East LA. They protested failing schools, low expectations, unequal conditions, racist teachers, an education system that was supposed to work for them, but that too often was working against them. They were kids with courage, and soon 22,000 other Angelenos joined them, took part in these walkouts, and they said that only through a quality education could this city and this country act on the promise of a better tomorrow. In standing up and speaking out, these students, many of them immigrants and children of immigrants, they wrote a heroic new chapter in our nation's history. This year, a half-century later, Angelenos were on the streets once again. Parents, students, and community members walking side by side with teachers to stand up for the idea that an excellent education is the birthright of every child in America. We witnessed something extraordinary. Tens of thousands of Angelenos walking picket lines in the rain. And as I convened parties at City Hall to help settle the strike, I saw an opening for something much greater than just a teacher's contract. I realized this was a moment for us to unite around a new social contract, to enshrine LA as a city of opportunity for everyone. Because here in Los Angeles, we never let a good crisis go to waste. After the Northridge earthquake, we remembered the lives lost, but we rebuilt our city and emerged even more resilient. After Watts and Rodney King, in the face of soaring crime, we rethought and we reformed public safety. And after the Great Recession, we went back to the basics and made City Hall and our economy work once again. And in the last 5 years, Los Angeles has outpaced New York, Chicago, and our country as a whole in both economic and income growth. That ability to turn adversity into progress embodies the best of who we are. We saw that on the streets during the teachers' strike. And let me tell you, behind the scenes, it was just as powerful. Years of frustration and division had left wounds and wide gaps between the district and the teachers' union. The mistrust ran deep. But despite that history, for 5 days and through the night into a sixth, everyone stayed committed at the table. I watched as advocates became leaders and sides became the beginning of a coalition. What started as a tense negotiation evolved into a real plan about how we could all work together to put our kids and their futures first. You know, many years after I leave City Hall, I will remember the night during those negotiations when the bargaining teams and I went to the top of City Hall to watch a rare lunar eclipse. I couldn't help think about history that night, staring out at our beautiful city, in front of a room named for the greatest mayor we ever had, Tom Bradley, and the last mayor to confront a strike in this town. As the last mayor to confront a teacher's strike in this town, I thought about what he did on a night just like that 30 years before. And I thought about everyone who has come before us in LA. Those who dared bring water to a parched pueblo, those who stood unbowed during a Great Depression, those who built factories that helped win a world war, and those who joined walkouts and marched to advance the civil rights movement. I thought about who we are and have always been in Los Angeles, a city that writes its own history, that comes together to achieve big things. Over the last 6 years, I've seen this, I've felt this, and as mayor, I know this. While other generations survived economic catastrophe and war, our fight today is twofold, and it's right in front of us. It's no less clear than it was for those who came before us. First, to confront the greatest threat to our physical security and our health. This time, not some distant threat overseas, but one right here, a war on our shores, with rising tides, and in our mountains with burning forests. Our fight is to protect nothing less than our families and our city from the impacts of climate change. And we have to fight, secondly, to end inequality in this country, a country too often defined by haves and have-nots, with widening gaps of opportunity. And we know where that fight begins, on a campus like this, with an education system that works for everybody. We can't just say that schools are the great equalizer, especially when those schools become places where we increasingly warehouse our poverty and our trauma. We cannot abandon our schools and expect teachers or administrators or support staff or even the kids themselves to solve our deepest collective problems. It's up to each and every one of us to step up and to take action. Because in LA, we don't run away from a challenge, we rise to it. And I know we will do so again. As your mayor, I have witnessed our strength. I have felt our courage to innovate and to create, to dream and to do. My dream coming into City Hall as your mayor was to try to get back to the basics, to improve our city services, and to drive economic prosperity. And my approach as your mayor has always been never to get hung up in the headlines of today or the protests of today or the criticisms of tomorrow, but to always think about what our city will need 50 years from now. It's that approach that helped us create a record number of jobs for the first time in 2 decades in our city, to cut unemployment in half, to raise the minimum wage while we cut the city's business tax, cut red tape, opened up our data with Controller Galperin, and helped more than 260,000 new businesses open their doors here in LA. We are now the 3rd largest metropolitan economy in the world after Tokyo and New York. That is something to celebrate. But we didn't just reboot our economy, we're preparing it for tomorrow by building the infrastructure that our children and grandchildren deserve, by passing the largest local transportation initiative in this nation's history ×2 to build 15 rapid transit lines and to pave those damn streets. To get it done. And working with Councilmember Bob Blumenfield, the lights are too much. Bob, there you are, Bob. Never looked better, man. We're making the most of LA's infrastructure to make it resilient and lasting, and thank you for your leadership. That includes investments like $14 billion at LAX, now the 4th busiest airport in the world. And because the trip to LAX shouldn't take longer than the trip from LAX, we're bringing finally the plane train straight to the terminals. We're partnering with Councilmember Joe Buscaino, or as most of LA likes to call him, Joe Busciano. Sorry, inside joke there. To strengthen our harbor, and thank you, Joe, for your leadership. We are breaking records at our port, the busiest in the Western Hemisphere, even in the midst of a trade war. And let me thank the hardworking men and women of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union who are here tonight, straight from our negotiations at City Hall, for setting those records. We applaud you. 5 years ago in Northridge, my second State of the City address, I said we would do the hard work to make sure we addressed rising crime. And I'm proud to report that those efforts have paid off. We've added more than 1 million patrol hours to LA's streets compared to 2016. We've doubled shelter funding last year to reach more survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. We've taken over 14,000 guns off our streets in the last 2 years alone. And we've expanded, And because we know it's not just about suppression, but intervention and prevention, we've expanded the area served by award-winning gang reduction and youth development program by 80%, serving 6,500 of LA's youth and their families every year. The result? We saw a drop in citywide crime overall last year, including the second lowest number of homicides in our city's history and the lowest homicide rate we've ever seen in South Los Angeles. But as we thank our officers and our community members who have brought that about, we know even one homicide, as we felt recently, is one too many. So now it's time to go deeper. So this year we're going to expand our nationally renowned community safety partnership. Indeed, which places officers in a neighborhood for 5 years where they can develop relationships, friendships, connections with the people that they serve. Already a runaway success in 3 neighborhoods, we're partnering with Councilmember Price to bring CSP to South Park, and, that was Councilmember Price applauding, and we're bringing it to the Fernando Gardens in the Valley alongside our new Public Safety Chair, Councilmember Rodriguez. And this year, we're going to make sure that our officers spend more time on patrol than on paperwork. Right now, an officer who makes an arrest in the morning is often out of commission for the rest of the day, processing an arrest on an old, slow computer and old systems. So this year, in the budget, we're going to be investing $14 million in tech upgrades at LAPD, part of a multi-year effort to meet Chief Michael Moore's goal of putting men and women where they belong in the communities that they protect and serve. And that's just a down payment, because one of LA's most dynamic business leaders, Steve Robinson, will help enlist the private sector and foundations in the movement to modernize the technology in our police department. We're defining LA through safer streets, but also through doors of opportunity that are open to everyone. In an era of hashtags like Me Too, Time's Up, Oscars So White, your city government isn't sitting on the sidelines. We've brought gender equity to our boards and commissions for the first time in city history. And we've brought more girls onto our courts and our fields, thanks in large part to the vision and leadership of my extraordinary wife and your First Lady, Amy Elaine Wakeland. I think I pointed to Monica by accident. That's my wife right there on the aisle. Told you the lights are bright. And we launched a program that I'm so proud of called Pledge LA, with over 100 tech companies and capital funders signing on already, committed to hiring more people of color and women in the tech industry and focusing their attention on finding solutions to some of our most pressing problems, from traffic to homelessness. And through our Evolve Entertainment Fund, we've connected hundreds of young people to mentors and paid internships in our signature television and film industry. 70% of them women, 98% of them women, people of color. And by the end of next year, we'll have more than 1,000 new voices in our entertainment industry. That's not the sidelines, that's action. When students right here at Lincoln walked off this campus in 1968, they weren't just standing up for their values, they were standing up for all of our values. They weren't saying we should be tolerated or that we love diversity. They carried American flags and carried them high next to signs that said, Viva la raza. And they said, we belong. We belong. To me, that's what distinguishes Los Angeles. That's why we are a city of sanctuary. And on that point, I have a message for our president, that immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers are people, not pawns. We are not afraid. We will not be scared. We will be a city of angels. You see, here in this city and in this country, we believe that all people deserve to be treated with dignity. And that's why this year we will create the first ever Los Angeles Civil and Human Rights Commission with Councilmember Gil Cedillo, the Black Worker Center, and others. A commission that will root out and end discrimination in our town. This commission will root out and end discrimination wherever it exists in our community. Because in LA, we don't just say what we stand for, we make it real. We don't just raise the minimum wage, we enforce wage theft. We don't just say we support immigrants, we defend them. And we don't avert our eyes from acts of violence in far-off places like Pittsburgh and New Zealand or bigotry here at home, whether the target is an Armenian school in Canoga Park, a synagogue in Tarzana, or a mural in South LA. We come together as Angelenos, joining hands to grieve, to heal, and to reaffirm who we are. Yes, everyone belongs in Los Angeles. But we feel just as strongly that nobody belongs here in Los Angeles on our streets. Fighting homelessness is not for the faint of heart. This is tough, tough work. And like you, I'm as frustrated about any encampment on any sidewalk in our city. Too many of us see our brothers and sisters in tents in our neighborhoods, or a man sleeping on our corner who still hasn't get the help that he needs, the mental health care, the addiction treatment. And I'm impatient, as tired as you about how long it takes to make a real dent in this crisis, but I am not. And we are not turning away from this. We are pushing forward. And based on the evidence, the money that's been invested, the new hires that are being made, the time we've dedicated, I know things will turn around. Yes, we can point to reasons that slow us, barriers we didn't see coming, NIMBYism that slows down a project, lawsuits more focused on people's stuff on the streets than how quickly we can move them indoors, a statewide housing crisis that hasn't gotten any better. So yes, some days I'm frustrated, but you know me, I am passionate about this. There's no issue I work on more than the issue of homelessness, and I can tell you this, we will get there. We will get there. We know that the first few years of a project this expansive is always spent on getting the machinery going, hiring people, funding projects, actually physically breaking the ground. And it can get worse on the streets while this is happening. But I'm here to tell you that in this coming year, we will start to see a difference on our sidewalks and in our communities. Thanks to our philanthropic partners and the voters who are committed to this fight, thanks to state legislators like the State Senator Bradford and Assemblymember Carrillo, and any others who arrived after I got my list, we love you all, who are committed to this fight with us. We have nearly $5 billion to spend in these coming years. We will see real progress, and we're already seeing it. At the First Bridge Home facility near the city's birthplace at El Pueblo, crime and tents are down by more than 60%. And by this time next year, at least 15 new bridge housing projects will connect people to permanent housing and be open. And let me thank this front row, because I've seen the courage of this city council. And I want to thank you, folks like Herb Wesson and Mike Bonin, and Mitch O'Farrell and Jose Huizar, people who have put everything they've got into standing up bridge housing, and all of you who are working on projects right now, even in the face of some of the loudest criticism there is. I'm grateful to each of you who is joining us from the community. We have to solve homelessness with beds and housing. We need housing and shelter in every part of LA. And this fall, in Council District 13, the first HHH project will finally welcome people home into permanent housing. One of 107 developments, 107 that are in the pipeline that will open their doors in the coming years. Nearly 7,000 new units that our homeless brothers and sisters and low-income families deserve. They deserve to come home. And every time I see a tent on the street, it only makes me want to push harder. Because even in the face of pain that lingers on our streets, I am more optimistic about tomorrow. And I know what we're doing is making a difference. Here's a proof point. In 2014, we were housing about 8,500 homeless Angelenos a year. In just 3 years, we nearly doubled that rate, housing nearly 17,000 people in 2017 alone, and I expect that number to go up even more when we get the results from last year in a couple weeks. That's over 1,400 real people a month. To put that in perspective, that's the size of Fresno's entire homeless population every 30 days being housed. In just 3 years, we doubled the investments in shelter beds across LA County with our great supervisors who have been remarkable partners in this. They're opening their doors, supported by more than 800 Angelenos who answered our call to join an army that we are assembling to defeat homelessness. Outreach workers, mental health professionals, housing navigators, and addiction specialists. They're working harder and faster than ever before to reach our homeless neighbors. But while we should be extremely proud of that number, 17,000 people housed in a single year, as long as the number of people falling into homelessness continues to grow, we're just treading water, or even worse, losing ground. Too many parents in the city are moving their families into cars because they're living paycheck to paycheck and they can't afford the rent. That's not right. Now, there are amazing landlords in the city who are helping us meet this crisis head on, and I want to publicly thank them. Last year, our nonprofit partner, People Assisting the Homeless, or PATH, launched a website called Lease Up LA with Measure H dollars. Now, here's how it works. Landlords sign up online, and with support from housing nonprofits across LA, they match their apartments with great Angelenos. But it can take up to 4 months once we find somebody willing to come in to find a place. We must shorten that wait. So to help us do that, and to meet our goal of adding 2,000 units to the site in the coming year, I'm calling on property owners to sign up and be a part of the solution. Give Angelenos a place to call home. And while we're focused on bringing those folks indoors, it's also time for us to strengthen the safety net that can keep people from becoming homeless in the first place. Because suffering continues to outpace solutions. Too often, Angelenos who live in rent-stabilized housing are illegally evicted by those landlords who want to illegally get rid of them to raise the rent. And by the time tenants often learn what their rights are, it's too late. They've signed a piece of paper and they're out of their home. That's why today I'm announcing a new program to provide free legal representation to low-income Angelenos in danger of losing their homes. Because it's time to turn the tide against displacement. It's time to not just react to homelessness on our streets, but to stop it before it starts. My friends, I see homelessness, public safety, equity, infrastructure, and so many other issues these days through the eyes of our daughter, Maya, who's 7 years old. Some days after I'm done with work, I'm at home falling asleep, and I wonder, what does Los Angeles look like to children her generation who are growing up? How will it look when they start their families? And that's the lens through which I consider our future. And I try to answer 2 questions to which I'd like to dedicate the rest of my address today that is so important to her generation. 1, will Angelenos receive the education that they deserve? And 2, are we going to leave them an earth that they can inhabit? Those are heavy questions. And I know that the work that we do today on these 2 issues, to set up our young people for success and to confront climate change, well, these will eclipse everything else that we are working on when we look back at this moment. First, climate change. We cannot build the Los Angeles our children and their children deserve unless we protect the planet that they will inherit. The students and teachers here at Lincoln know this well, because studying the environment is part of the core curriculum here for every young person. And one of them is Emily, too. Emily, would you stand up? She's here in the 3rd row at the moment. 4th row. Emily is amazing. She is a junior here in the Environmental and Social Policy Magnet. When she was a little girl, she was horrified at the sight of a massive fire on the evening news. She thought the world was ending. That day she told her dad that she would be the one to save it. Well, after what you've achieved, Emily, on this campus, anyone would be a fool to bet against you. You've already produced a documentary about how people can fight climate change, and Emily's raised funds to build a greenhouse a few steps away from here on this campus. And for her capstone project next year, she plans on turning sugar and corn syrup into ethanol and using that biofuel to power a light bulb. Don't worry, you don't have to stand for the whole speech. You can sit down. I just wanted them to know who you are. And Emily isn't the only one in the Lincoln community or her generation prepared to do battle with climate change. In your own words, if I can quote you, Emily, she said, "A lot of bright minds are ready to make a difference, ready to show a better way to live." Emily, you're right. That must be our mission, to make a difference and to find a better way to live. We have to find solutions everywhere, starting right here in our backyards. Because this crisis isn't some sort of distant tragedy. It's all around us. The pollution that we inhale, the flames on our hillsides, the floods on our streets. And it's hitting our pocketbooks too. I recently met with the regional administrator of FEMA for the Western states, and he told me that the federal government distributed $80 billion in the last 2 years for natural disasters, and that we had done that previously over the previous 27 years. In other words, we paid as much in the last 2 years as we had in the preceding 27. Well, at that pace, climate change may erase everything else we're working on. Who cares how many potholes we fill if Venice is underwater? Will our 911 calls matter if our firefighters are always off firing an even bigger fire in the state? If our city is overwhelmed by climate refugees, do you think we'll care about cuts to our library hours or our park programs? This climate emergency is real. It's happening everywhere. It's one of the reasons I founded and head up Climate Mayors, now a coalition of 422 cities representing over 70 million Americans who, when President Trump said we're out of Paris, we said we're in. It's the reason that I've been so active in C40, a global megacities group of 94 large cities that are not only upholding the Paris Agreement, but paving the way to a zero-emissions future. While the crisis has never been more intense, what makes this crisis different, the solutions have never been cheaper and more achievable. Right? Most things, the further you get in, the more it costs. This one is the opposite. And all now that is missing is the will to act with the urgency and the scale demanded by this moment. It's been so exciting for me to hear lawmakers in Washington talk about a Green New Deal. But I'd say to our leaders in the nation's capital, you don't have to look across the aisle to find solutions. Just look across the country, right here to Los Angeles. You see, the Green New Deal, as it's being described, is built on two main principles: protect our environment and make the economy work for everyone. And 4 years ago, we released our Sustainable City Plan to do just that. It was based on the 3 E's, as we called it: the environment, economy, and equity. People said we were crazy to have things like equity in an environmental plan. But we set out 61 outcomes in 14 categories with hard and fast deadlines. And I'm proud to announce that 4 years later, we have met or exceeded 90% of our goals on time or early, thanks to the City Council and the work that we have done together. We have working with the Council, we're integrating the environment into all of our policymaking. And my executive director directed every department to appoint a chief sustainability officer. This isn't in the speech, but I loved it when Chief Beck, Chief Moore's predecessor, gave his cabinet report that crime was down that week and that they had quantified the number of trees they had saved because they finally were doing double-sided printing at the police department. This is now part of the culture everywhere. In that plan, I said we'd completely wean ourselves off of coal power by 2025, and we will. We've invested in record numbers of renewables, and I was proud to make the decision to stop the repowering of 3 natural gas power plants on our coast so that we won't just be coal-free, we will be carbon-free. Together, we made LA the #1 solar city in America. And guess what else we did? We created 35,000 green jobs. That makes up for every single lost coal job in America, to put that in perspective, right here in LA. We reduced our greenhouse gas emissions 11% in a single year, and guess what happened to the economy? We reduced unemployment by 14% that same year. So now we're going to double down on LA's Green New Deal and keep working towards our ultimate goal, to become a carbon-neutral city with a thriving middle class. So let me lay out that vision here for us today. First, we will zero out our main sources of harmful emissions. Not first, these are the categories: buildings, transportation, electricity, and trash. And we will lead with the boldest possible action on every front. First, we will mandate zero carbon buildings, ensuring that every skyscraper, commercial development, home, and municipal office will be emissions-free by 2050. Two, we'll build a zero-emissions transportation network, putting more charging stations in our neighborhoods, giving Angelenos more options to get out of their cars and into transit, bikes, scooters, car shares, and buses. Three, we will build a zero-carbon electricity grid, reaching 80% clean energy by 2036 as we lead our state towards 100% renewables in 2045. Four, we'll achieve a zero-waste future, marking the end of plastic straws and styrofoam and single-use takeout containers in our city by 2028. And by 2050, we won't send a single piece of trash to the landfill. Next, water. You've heard me say it, but we are going to deliver a second Mulholland moment by recycling 100% of our wastewater by 2035. To put that in perspective, that's like building 3 LA aqueducts. Taken together, these 5 pillars will cut our emissions by 30%, the equivalent of shutting down 50 coal-fired power plants. But our goal with the Green New Deal isn't to simply set ambitious policy objectives, it's to implement them, and that requires strong leadership. So tonight I'm announcing the establishment of the Los Angeles Climate Emergency Commission to direct our city's efforts, a commission that will draw the best ideas from neighborhoods that are on the front lines of climate change, harness the expertise of our smartest scientists, and recommend long-term actions to reduce rising temperatures. With the Climate Emergency Commission in place, our Green New Deal will build aggressively on the efforts of my sustainability team and the extraordinary leadership of this council, led by council members Martinez and Koretz. We must ensure that Los Angeles survives this challenge. And because our work in addressing climate change has always been about our economy and economic justice, we're going to make LA the green jobs capital of America, with new training at our community colleges like Trade Tech, where we're teaching students how to manage stormwater projects. Is that the Community College Board and our chancellor out there, Francisco? With jobs installing more solar panels and standing up energy-efficient homes and buildings. With careers developing new energy technologies, leading to more prosperity, more savings, and a cleaner, safer planet. That's why also tonight I'm announcing the formation of a new jobs cabinet, led by John Reamer and our Economic Workforce Development Department. This jobs cabinet will bring together city, business, education, and labor leaders to support training programs and create 300,000 good green jobs over the next 15 years. And we'll work with Councilmember Harris Dawson so that those, there you are, with Marquise right here, so those middle-class jobs go to Angelenos in communities of color and low-income neighborhoods that often bear the unequal brunt of climate change. And we're going to work with the building trades to ensure we're protecting the livelihoods of our union workers. It's mission critical that our Green New Deal supports everyone, whether it's small business owners who can't afford to keep the air conditioning running during brutally hot summers, or people with asthma or cancer living next to an oil well. And thank you, City Attorney Feuer, for your fight on behalf of those people. That means putting those most impacted by this crisis at the front of the line for solar power, new trees, and cool pavement. There is no question this is the fight of our lives, and we're ready for it. We will release LA's updated Green New Deal later this month, and it is a call to arms, and I invite you to join me in this monumental effort. Because when our grandchildren ask, what did we do to fight climate change? I want to be able to say, yes, I did something. I want us to be able to say, yes, we did something. Finally, here in Los Angeles, we believe in a city where every young person, regardless of her zip code or family income, can realize her dreams. But the stark reality is that 8 out of every 10 students in a public school lives in poverty. 8 out of 10. Let's think about a day in the life of one of those students, a 5th grader. It's the end of the month and the refrigerator is almost empty. She's hungry in the morning and leaves home for school where she might get her only 2 meals of the day. She takes her seat in a classroom with 32 other students. She loves to read, but the school library is closed because there's no librarian. At recess, she plays on broken asphalt because there's no green space on campus. And if she sprains her wrist, God forbid, she'll be lucky if she can see the nurse because she's only there 1 day a week. After the school bell rings, she goes home to a cramped apartment where there's plenty of love but no quiet place to study. She can't go to an after-school program because she has to look after her younger brother. She might spend a half hour with her mother before her mom goes off to her second job. And then when that student reaches high school, there isn't anybody in her family who's ever gone to college who knows how to think about filling out a financial aid form. Her family doesn't know anybody who can hook her up with an internship. And the counselor at her school, who she badly needs to talk to, has 500 students ahead of her, meaning he's too busy to offer meaningful guidance. At every step, she finds obstacles instead of support to reach her ambitions, to earn good grades, to take up soccer or join the debate club, to go to college and to pursue her dream of becoming a nurse. Today, right now, right here, we have a chance to change this story. The teachers' strike provided our great city with an opportunity to build a new culture of collaboration. I want to thank the mayors from our neighboring cities that are here with us today, many of them part of LAUSD, because I know they join with me in saying it's time to stop giving lip service to the idea that schools should be at the center of our neighborhoods and to actually do something about it. My friends, it's time to call time out on old fights over charter schools, tenure rules, which special interest group has more power, and instead find some common ground around education. It's time to stop complaining that our schools are underfunded and actually fund them. And I know we can get there, because no matter our differences, Angelenos share a vision of what our children, all of our children, deserve. That vision fueled the historic agreement that ended the teachers' strike, but it also ignited a spark that we cannot allow to burn out. We need to look farther, we need to be bolder, and we need to understand that all of us are responsible for all the children of our city. Parents and teachers, support staff and administrators, the city and the county, the faith community, neighborhood organizations, and yes, the private sector. Now is the time for us to harness our unstoppable energy and bring the necessary resources and urgency to our movement to build opportunity for everyone. Now is the time to stop complaining that you can't find the right employees for your business, or the expense of incarceration, or the homelessness epidemic. Now it is time to fund our schools. In June, Measure EE will be on our ballots. Now, because we're at a school and the government event. I'm not going to tell you how to vote on Measure EE. But let me tell you what it would do. Measure EE will help us dramatically, finally lower our class sizes, so that when any student raises a hand and doesn't understand a concept, she isn't left behind. Measure EE will make sure our school libraries are open and staffed by a teacher librarian, because schools are our city's literacy programs. Measure EE will put a nurse on campus not just one day a week, but every day, because kids don't schedule when they're going to get sick or injured. Measure EE will help us hire support staff and more janitors, provide funds to help build what we all know a good school looks like, that includes counselors that our high school students can get to know and get to see. We have students in this system, maybe at this school, who have seen loved ones shot in front of their eyes, who've grown up in the foster care system, or with domestic violence in their homes. That trauma goes untreated every day, or they have to get in line behind hundreds of other students to see a counselor. Measure EE will cut counselors' caseload so they can give more attention to the young people who are counting on us. And Measure E would provide resources to create more supportive services for families, add more after-school programming, and technology to our schools, from computers to robotics. Now, I understand the criticism from folks who say this district hasn't reformed enough. And in many regards, I agree with you. I'm sure the school board and the school leadership does too. There's always more work to do. But I want to acknowledge a district that its graduation rates on the rise, a district that has slashed the number of days lost to student suspension by 90%. There will always be those who claim that funding our schools is a waste of money. But our children are not a waste of money. So yes, there is more work to be done, but this is a district that, with your help, I believe can go the distance. It built 131 new schools in 2 decades with the support of LA voters, including renovations coming to this campus, so more students could learn in their own neighborhoods. But new classrooms can't change students' lives when they're filled with too many kids. And I want to be clear, I will continue to do my part to ensure that LAUSD is held accountable in managing their dollars, pushing through reforms, and importantly, empowering communities through neighborhood schools that local communities can embrace. But we must move forward. The alternative is to starve our schools of funding, to allow in a couple years teacher and staff layoffs, to do nothing to address larger class sizes. And to me, and it should be for you, that is unacceptable. We cannot wait. We cannot wait. And I say this to our district and to our students and to the people of Los Angeles, that I will stay committed to this fight as long as I am your mayor. And together with mayors from the Southeast cities, we believe in this district because we believe in our schools. We believe in our teachers. We believe in our support staff. And most of all, we believe in the hopes and the dreams of this city's young people, the students who are LAUSD. And don't worry, Measure EE isn't happening in some vacuum. It's part of a larger and exciting vision for LA schools that starts in the first days of a student's journey and carries them through to a diploma and a career. And it involves all of us. Less than half of children from low-income families in America are school-ready at age 5. Less than half. And we know that most brain growth takes place in those first few precious years of life, when young children learn new words and develop social and problem-solving skills. Our failure then costs us for the rest of their lives. Early education is critical to learning. Its benefits reach far beyond kindergarten to better outcomes in school and higher graduation rates. Early childhood education shouldn't be a luxury only for those who can afford it. The stakes are too high. I want to thank a great governor, Governor Newsom, for accounting for the needs of our youngest learners in his first budget by including dollars to expand early learning facilities, to train early childhood educators, and to add seats for kids across the state. These are investments in California's future. And let me tell you this, Mr. Governor, LA is ready for this investment. And we will focus these state resources to make sure that every child, especially children living in the highest concentrations of poverty, are ready to learn when they get to kindergarten. Working with the district, the County Office of Education, and First 5 LA, we will wipe out the school readiness gap for our most vulnerable children in Los Angeles. And I want to thank our county supervisors and everyone who's already a part of this effort that we are leading. To get there, we're going to focus on building up the workforce we need to teach and inspire our youngest learners. So I'm setting a new goal tonight to recruit, train, and certify 2,500 new early childhood educators by 2025. And I know we can count on Councilmember Paul Krikorian, a longtime leader in this effort. Thank you, Paul. And thank you to our partners from our adult schools, our community colleges, and the California State University system. To nurture the next generation of early childhood educators, we'll support our College Promise students who are in community college today. And thank you to Mike Fong, Andra Hoffman, Scott Svonkin, if he's here, and Francisco Rodriguez, their board members and chancellor, because they have done amazing work. And on those campuses, students who have a dream to teach but don't know how to make it real, we got you covered. New Angelinos who came to this country with teaching skills and experience but still need to be certified here, or experts in our communities who've been caring for children for generations but they've lacked access to the latest training and resources, that's who we'll touch. And that's how we'll develop a highly trained workforce to meet the needs of every child here in LA and set them up for success in school. And then, when our kids take off from that launch pad, we'll greet them on the first day of kindergarten with a library card, which opens up a universe of learning and discovery, as it did for me when my mom took me to the Sherman Oaks Public Library almost every day. We won't just give them a library card, though. Together with Councilmember David Rue, thank you, David, we'll work to create a higher education savings account program for every LAUSD student in Los Angeles. And to make sure kids keep learning over the summer, we'll build on our expansion of the LA's Best Summer Learning. Last fall, 7,200 students returned to their classrooms ready for success because of this program. By next summer, LA's Best will offer summer learning in our 2 Promise Zones, adding another 1,200 students to this program. You see, our vision for education puts schools at the center of their communities, sometimes literally. My administration has worked with the school district already to create 4 community school parks at elementary schools across LA, keeping those schools open on weekends to provide 45,000 Angelinos who live in neighborhoods without a park in walking distance with a place to play, to take art, to dance and exercise, all within walking distance of their homes. So tonight, building on that success and thanks to the partnership with our district, we're setting a new goal to open 25 additional community school parks in elementary schools by 2025. Every student, every Angelino deserves a place to play when the bell rings or on weekends and over the summer. Then in middle school, we have to plant the seed of higher education. Last year, together, we helped bring nearly $78 million to 14,000 LA students for tutoring and college and career counseling, starting in the 6th grade and lasting to graduation day. We've opened college corners in all of the 16 family source centers, to help parents and students fill out those financial aid forms and apply for college. And Los Angeles, we made history when we came together to make community college free. I hope the state supports Assemblymember Santiago's bill to follow. And the Community College District, the school district, and I are proud to report that we have boosted full-time community college enrollment in less than 2 years by 56% from LAUSD. That's a breathtaking number. Congratulations. That means this past year, more than 5,000 Angelinos became full-time College Promise students, a program that does much more than covering just your tuition. It connects students with jobs, internships, travel abroad experiences like the one we offered to Egypt and Japan and Mexico with the extraordinary support of our consular corps, who I want to publicly thank here tonight. Recently, I met with these inspiring students, and they told me how these opportunities were literally life-changing. But they also said they still struggle to afford a computer or to pay for transportation to and from school. One student told me that he read his textbook from screenshots on his cell phone. So starting next year, every LA College Promise student will have free rides on our Dash buses, and thanks to the Annenberg Foundation, I'm proud to announce that each one of them will have a laptop that they can take home at night. That feels like Oprah. And if you look under your seats right now, no, just kidding. And College Promise is growing because today I'm announcing that we will double the program to 10,000 students by 2022. You see, children don't live in a vacuum. They live in our families and our neighborhoods and our communities. This is about opening the door to a bright future for every graduate. It's the same reason that we will quadruple the number of youth jobs in Los Angeles from when I took office to over 20,000 jobs for young Angelenos who will get a shot to learn about a workplace or find a mentor or explore a potential career. And we're equipping young people with a web platform called Find Your Future, connecting them to work that actually lines up with their skills and interests so that they can earn and learn. Los Angeles, this is our moment. Over 28% of children in LA County live in poverty, and they're concentrated in our public schools. So let's fix that. Employers, those who want to bring world-class talent to our city or find it here, you need good public schools, so let's make that happen. And I want to thank those who joined us in getting Measure EE on the ballot. See, I just said on the ballot. And I want our business owners, every company, large and small, to consider how a better education system will build a better workforce and a better bottom line. In the long run, we must come together for our children, and let's turn out that vote in June. Because if we do, we'll know that this was the moment that we transformed LA's future. This was the moment that we rebuilt our middle class. This was the moment we strengthened the foundation for the city that our children and our grandchildren will inherit. You know, sitting in a high school history class, flipping the pages of a textbook, progress almost seems easy. On page 72, slavery ends. Page 95, women get the right to vote at last. Then there are the East LA walkouts on page 115. Suddenly, if you turn to page 128, there's marriage equality. Moving through those pages in a class, sometimes we forget. Sometimes we don't feel how hard won progress is. The long negotiations, the compromises forged, the lives lost, the gains sometimes erased, and finally the breakthroughs that change the course of history. Our future achievements won't come easy. Ending homelessness, reducing traffic, building great schools, and saving our city from climate change. But what great challenge has ever come without hard work? You see, a big part of LA's history is how we come together to write our story. Etched above the windows in this room are reminders of our roots, literal windows into our city's past. That window up there, I know you can't all see it, but 1781. It says, Pueblo, la Reina de Los Angeles, founded. Over there, 1847, Los Angeles joins the United States of America. 1850, California is admitted to the Union. 1913, this school opens its doors. What will we see through tomorrow's windows? My job as your mayor is clear. to fight for each and every one of you and to deliver a back-to-basics agenda that works, to run a city that never shuts down, that answers your 911 calls, a city where everybody can share in the wealth that we create, a city where every neighborhood school is empowered to educate the leaders of today and tomorrow. Together, we deliver the destiny that has made the City of Angels one of the great world capitals, built, powered, and propelled forward by our labor and our dreams, by people who come from every part of the globe and from across this great country. One day, the bold hopes we're fighting for will be etched above the windows of some school yet to be built. 2028, Angelinos end street homelessness and welcome the world to the Olympic and Paralympic Games. 2035, a college promise graduate, maybe even Emily or one of her classmates in Ms. Kwan's senior seminar here at Lincoln, win a Nobel Prize. 2045, Los Angeles becomes the first big city on the planet to eliminate carbon emissions. We have the power to make these milestones happen, and the stakes have never been higher. So today, as we leave this room, we fight for our future, the future of our planet and our progeny, the future of our communities and our children. We have a choice in June at the ballot box on education, and we have a choice every day when we turn the ignition or turn on the tap to consider what it means to live sustainably. So what choice will we make? Will we be the generation that fell short because we lacked the courage and foresight to keep our oceans from rising and our crops from dying? Will we be the generation that put profits ahead of people and whose students suffered while our schools were shortchanged? Trust me, lost in the history books are the people who said no, who said we could never bring water to Los Angeles because it was too expensive, who said we could never defeat the Axis powers and we should just mind our own business, who said we could never fly faster than the speed of sound, slip the bonds of gravity, and traverse the cosmos. We cannot wait for the pen to be passed to us to write the next chapter of LA history. Tonight we hold that pen in our hands as we write the future of an even stronger city. And so I invite you, all of you, to be the authors of this next chapter, where we guarantee every one of our children a quality education, where we ensure that the world that they inherit is not choked by pollution. My grandfather, Salvador, an immigrant from Mexico and a dreamer who earned his citizenship on the East Side after fighting for our freedom in World War II, was part of what we call the greatest generation. What will the future call us, this generation? I believe that when they are asked what we did to meet the challenges of our age, they will answer the generation that secured our future. Because here in Los Angeles, we don't just promise greatness, we act together to achieve it, and we will. And in doing so, we will make the state of our great city stronger than ever before. Thank you. God bless Los Angeles, and God bless all of you. Thank you.